perspective, remember there's three perspectives, three common ways anyway. Atmospheric perspective, we covered that really well with how things recede and get smaller and are fuzzier. Isometric perspective, which is the diagonal lines showing us, well, let's pull that up again. And then linear perspective has 1, 2, and 3, and then even more point perspective. So for isometric, just remember it's got diagonal viewpoints trying to show us the size of the building at the same time as the top of the roof so that we get a sense of the actual shape of the object. So it doesn't recede into one point perspective, and I'm going to show you a little bit of the difference there on that. Let's get over here. So when we're thinking about the one point perspective, how things shrink to a point, and they come down this way. With isomeric perspective, this building would stay kind of squarish and not come to a point here and have slanted sides. Does that make sense? So that you can see the actual shape of the building better. Okay, so we're going to get into 2 point. We talked about 1 point. We have our artwork from Masaccio. We're going to get into 2 point. So there's two separate vanishing points, and it still uses a horizon line. Now this piece, the School of Athens, has both here. It has 1 point where we're standing straight here with this line right there looking all the way back, and we're eye level about here. And so everything converges on that point. Does that make sense? So this is the focal point going farther out in the distance, 1 point perspective. Now this is a fresco, and frescoes have a limited amount of paint that can be done at one time. It is sealed into the plaster for the duration of the building or wall, and this is an actual architectural space. This is a interior of a dome right here. There's a dome up here, you can't see it, but this is an actual architectural space. This is an implied, meaning painted, architectural space, and Raphael is trying to show us that there's depth here, implied depth, by using 1 point perspective. Excuse me. And then he adds more later. He adds sections at a time, but this whole back section, for the most part, is thought of at the same time. And then he struggled with this frontal character here, and he puts this guy into 2 point perspective. And the reason we know that is because this box is not straight toward us, so this box is going off in that direction, back in that direction, okay? So that's in 2 point perspective, and we're going to look at a diagram. So you can see this vanishing point. Okay, so I was a little bit off. It's a little bit lower. Horizon line is here. And that's our 1 point, okay? Everything's converging on that 1 point perspective there. He adds this fellow in the foreground later, and this is unusual. Usually an artwork only has one type of perspective, meaning 1, 2, or 3, or multiple. But this particular one has two different perspectives, meaning 1 point and 2 point. So we saw our 1 point with that central vanishing point. This is our 2 point. Now 2 point just means there's two vanishing points. There's one here on the horizon line, and there's one that goes off into infinity here. We don't know. The horizon line's off the page. So this box, the edges of that box are drawn in this way, and these lines are vanishing that way, and these lines are vanishing that way. Now if we were thinking about isomeric perspective, this box, this line, and this line would be the same, right? It's not vanishing. But in reality, we're trying to show what it would look like in reality. In implied depth and space, we would use a vanishing point, and the box would get smaller as it goes further away. Even in a small amount, like just from here to here, it's gotten that much smaller going away from us. Okay? So multiple point perspective, usually when you're looking at it from a high or low angle, So you need some vanishing points away from the horizon. 3-point perspective is a vanishing point placed above or below the horizon line. And we're going to look at that. Our cone of vision is the area we can see when we focus on a single point. So this is kind of imitating this in the artwork. A little hard to explain. So Escher, our guy who likes to bend space for us, this is a 3-point perspective. And this is going to show us, since we're looking down on it, how these lines all recede down here. Now here's our horizon. We are below the horizon line, and we are coming off of this plane. This flat surface here goes off this way. The edge of the building goes that way. The other edge of this goes that way. And then this line goes down here, okay? That is 3-point or bird's eye perspective. Foreshortening, this is an odd one and it's a little tricky, but basically when you have perspective, you have larger, the closer the object is, the larger it is. The further away, the smaller it is. So even when we're dealing with a tiny image like this, a figure, this fist, even though in reality it's more this, these are the same object, right? But since this is closer to us, it's bigger. And in this case, it's bigger than his head. And if you think about how big his foot is back here, his foot is probably as big as that thumbnail right there. That's foreshortening, meaning we're following the rules of perspective, so the objects closer to us are going to be bigger, okay, regardless of what they actually are, okay? It's exaggerating the depth, and his body's receding back into space. And I think that's it.